Welcome to the Big Fat Gay Podcast, where we talk about the things that are weighing on our minds. I'm Trevor Keyson. I'm a super chub, and I am here to podcast.
He's Miss Bossy today.
We were looking at I mean, when I say we, I mean the royal we is an I. Looking at big dog shirts, and there was one of the women's big dog shirts that just said it was just Miss Bossy exclamation point.
And I
really
said,
wanted
my baby
it.
has to have that shirt.
And I looked at it's like, what size does it go to? And they have up to 6X, and 6X is sold out, and small is sold out, which I think is like perfect for that shirt. Because I think if you're Miss Bossy, you're either me or, I don't know, some skinny lady.
Well, hi, my name is Michael. I'm a chubby chaser, and it's not technically true in this room, but I'll say it for Dan because he won't say it. I'm Mr. Bossy. Because I want to get that shirt for my Michael.
Hey there, my name's John. I'm a big chubby guy living here in sunny Hollywood, and today I am a well-sandwiched sandwich boy. We are actually recording our second podcast of the day.
No,
And I have been
We do them all live,
They
Don.
don't want you to know.
It's all live.
They're trying to keep it from you.
knock, knock, knock.
Who is it?
Mr. Marshall. We'd like a word.
Nobody home. Nobody home.
Oh, boy.
Dan.
Hello, my name is Dan Oliverio, author, public speaker, and authorized card-carrying, unionized chubby chaser.
There's a union?
Yes, there is.
How do I get in?
Oh, well, yeah, well, you know,
You actually have to get cards and waivers first, you know.
I believe we referenced the Chaser Union in an earlier episode.
dues are steep.
But are they wide?
Well, they're heavy.
Thank you to our always Patreon surprise.
Patrons.
Patrons.
Patronuses. I like this.
Our
The
Patronus.
Patreon is super helpful to us. We're very grateful for it. We're grateful for us too.
I'd like to thank me.
I'm hungover and I'm sandwiched. So
No, you're not, Don. It's a month from now.
They keep saying that. Why
Our
do they-
Patreonies.
we are very grateful for our
Our
Patreon
Patriolis.
subscribers.
Like ravioli.
The money that you provide us helps us keep bringing out the podcast as often as we do. And we, as a special thank you to all of our Patreon subscribers, we even put out little videos and occasionally short episodes for them. So go on over and check us out on Patreon.
Yeah.
Thank you for being the adult in the room, Don. Thank you very much.
Well, that's over.
Yeah. I think Michael's,
Back to Miss Bossy.
Michael's going to be the bossy man and press the button.
Oh!
Take us right on in to pop culture. And I feel like, I don't know, I haven't seen Naked Boys singing, but I feel like this is the same kind of vibe.
Well, you know, there's only 5 people on the earth, including you, who have not seen Naked Boys sing. It's been around forever.
Well, I'm the other one apparently.
Yeah.
I haven't either. I've seen Full Monty, but I'm assuming these aren't related.
This
in
is
any
the
way.
original Full Monty. This is hey, what if we had a musical review of songs and the hook is the guys are naked.
Okay, I get it. So it's sort of like because Full Monty is sort of like the precursor to that, or not precursor, but like it's the prelude.
It's the softcore version.
Well, and
no, but Full Monty ends with the Full Monty, whereas this sounds like the whole
Wait,
thing is that.
do they actually show anything at the end on the stage version?
They
don't
do
in the movie.
No, what they do is like everyone actually takes all the clothes off, but they they backlight them in this big flash of light where it becomes a silhouette rather than actually seeing.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they have
Cowards.
pasties on or what.
Yeah, this is not the case in Naked Boys.
Anyway, yeah, we're here to talk about Naked Boys Singing because they have cast for the current iteration, which is off Broadway, Dom Giovanni, who is how do they put it exactly? A non-traditional naked boy.
Which is a really nice politic way of saying yes, because traditional in this case means abs.
Yeah. So typically, and I think a lot of white boys.
Typically.
I guess think a gay.
All the posters I remember were A gays.
Yeah, it's what if you wanted to go to a circuit party and be in the audience while they sang and danced?
Yeah, which has an audience. Yeah. Anyway, Dom Giovanni is a fat man, and he got cast. He has been doing musical theater, dancing, singing, all of that stuff for years and years and years. and has gotten his big break, which is fantastic. So there in this article they post a couple things from his Instagram, and one of them is him dancing, I think, to the music, like rehearsing the music in Naked Boy Singing, and it is fantastic. You should go check him out. I'm getting a lot of Dexter vibes. He dances with sass. He should have a Miss Bossy shirt.
Maybe we should, if we ever can get our shit together and find a shirts that actually go to very large sizes. I think that could be a Big Fat Gay Podcast shirt.
Yeah, Miss Bossy.
Miss Bossy.
If you've ever wondered why we don't have T-shirts for the podcast, it's because we can't find a T-shirt that can be produced in sizes that would fit all of us.
Yeah. And we don't, and it's that thing of like, we don't want to be part of the problem, like putting things out there that not everybody who enjoys the podcast could participate in.
Yeah.
So congrats to Dom Giovanni. If you're in the New York area, check out
Naked Boy Singing.
If you're a listener and you go check it out, let us know. I don't know, maybe Dom Giovanni listens. I don't think so, but if you do, congratulations.
Yay.
Thank you.
Congratulations. You're going to be great. We would go see it if we were in New York. Dan and Trevor might end up in New York at some point.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know why I put my phone away. It's not like the show's done. We're still here.
On a completely different note, in terms of, representation question mark, there is a video that has kind of been going around from Bangkok of plus size clothing stores with
the names of the plus size clothing.
Yeah.
These names are awesome.
If you listen back, if you've read my book, there's a different relationship in Asia to fatness, and it's not that it's good, but it's not taboo.
Can I read it? Can I read some of these?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Buckle up.
And these are the names of stores.
These are the names of actual stores. The first one is BB Fat, BEEBEE. Then there's Fat Girls. Then there's Fatty Fat Girl.
I think I'm a fat
Love
fat girl.
Calories.
Love calories.
Moo Moo. Thai Fat. Fat Cat. This is a good one. And that's all of them. Well, it's all of them in the video, at least. I'm sure there are more.
Well, I wanted someone to go inside and like, okay, so what do they sell? Is this for tourists because the names are in English? Is this just we like English, so that's why the names are in English? Is this for fat Thai women? Is this for what is this?
I was saying, like, I actually like most of the names except for Moo Moo.
And
Moo Moo is the only one. But if they sell actual Moo Moos, I'm going to be okay with that.
Well, your reaction is spot on with a lot of the comments that this has received on TikToks, which is like, this is kind of honest and good and empowering, except maybe for Moo Moo.
Yeah.
It's funny. I think Love Calories is actually
The worst.
Yeah.
I mean, the worst, I guess, but I don't. They're so silly that I'm like not offended. I love Fatty Fat Girl.
Fatty Fat Girl.
Fatty Fat
Because I
Girl.
think there is like
You would totally shop at Fatty Fat Boy.
a mood and a
Fatty
vibe.
Fat Sandwich Ranch.
And I think there's like, actually, this is another thing I meant to grab, but in Japan, there's a magazine that's like a plus size men's kind of like fashion thing, and it's Mr. Chubby.
Nice. Mr. Chubby.
Yes. Well, and there is a, they have
My name is Mr. Chubby.
That's a great Bond villain. Come on.
Sorry. Keep going.
there's a J-pop group that's Marshmallow Girls.
Nice. Yes.
Which I love. It's like, I want to be a marshmallow boy. And I'll shop for outfits at Fatty Fat Boy.
I hate to break it to you, Trevor, but I think you already are.
Yeah, but I would maybe like hate king size less if they were like Fatty Fat Boy. Because like, that's really, I feel like there's nothing king-like about king size. King size
Yeah.
is very much like the Fatty Fat Boy store.
Well, unless you count drapery as king size.
Every time you single it out, it's the husky section all over again, you know?
Well, and I think that's why this is so appreciated because like I said, most of the commentary is positive about this. And because I think it reminds me of something that Tigris was talking to me about, where there's a real generational difference between the old guard fat activists who are like, how dare you label us this way and like let's say something like there's a fat activist site with a whale on it as a feature of the website, and like people who are offended by having a whale on the cover, and then much younger Gen Z who are like, yeah, whale, that's hysterical, and they're also fat people.
Jess Baker's book Land Whale, and kind of like there's a lot of
Land Whale is the
explanation
title
it.
of her book.
Yeah, Fatty Fat Boy. That's my.
I think that's a T-shirt. God damn it.
Fatty fat boy.
That's another. So there's Miss Bossy,
Miss
Fatty
Bossy,
Fat Boy.
Fatty Fat
and
Boy.
Fatty Fat Boy.
Oh, baby, you would rock that.
So one of the concerns of these store names, of course, is that it might increase fat stigma. So luckily that segues us very nicely into our Fat Watch segment.
Oh,
Yes.
button.
Fat Stigma Watch 2023.
Yes.
Is this all me?
This is
Yeah.
one
I
of those
just
ones
the
where
expected look I get from Michael, and I'm like, what? Oh yeah, okay.
we
Yeah,
get
yeah.
to. This is one of those fat watches
yeah.
where we all get to kind of kick back and
Dr. Dan.
watch
No,
Dan do his
all right. So Reagan Chastain, who is one of my very favorite champions of fat activism, she has a new newsletter, and one of the things that has just come up in the newsletter is a review of a study from last year. So the study is about how to protect oneself from fat stigma. And the question asked by the study, and again talked about by Reagan Chastain, is where is it most harmful? For example, there is certainly anti-fat bias out there in the world, but there's a particularly pernicious kind of anti-fat bias when it's internalized. And so the question becomes, how does anti-fat bias become internalized, where you have become the oppressor of your fat body? Not that it's not out there as well, but there's definitely a difference between people who seem to have taken that on and the people who have not taken it on. And a very active conversation between a lot of fat people of like, wow, you seem so confident. How do you do it? And so it's kind of like, where does that lie is the question of this study. And it's really remarkable because it's the first time this study has ever been looked at. Or the first time a study has looked at, fatness as stigma, and then where is the stigma coming from? How does it show up? And the idea is like, how can we protect ourselves from anti-fat bias? Anyway, so it is the first of its kind, and the authors, of course, are the first to point out that a lot more work needs to be done, and there are some things about the study that I'll talk about in a second. But basically, what I really love about this is it starts with the conversation that is fat an identity? Because very much like we've talked about on a previous podcast, there are some people who relate to fat as I am fat, that it is my identity. And then people who relate to being fat as a condition.
Yeah.
As, I used to be thin, but now I'm fat. Or sometimes I'm fat, sometimes I'm thin. And the reason that's relevant is because usually if you look at a lot of social justice, if you identify as part of a stigmatized community, your first way out is leave the stigmatized community. Like if you want to stop being shit on, get out of the group that's being shat on. And so that's the impetus for a lot of dieting. But then even if you don't do that, there is within that two other things where one is, well, maybe the stigma is right. Like I am fat and I do need to lose weight and it's a terrible thing that I'm fat. Or that it's, I just don't want to be shat on anymore. So this idea of like, where is it coming from? So anyway, the study breaks this down. The results are rather complex, but the finding that we really should be talking about is that even among people who don't identify as fat, who don't think I'm fat for life, always been fat, even among people who aren't that, the best way to seem to avoid fat stigma internally is to recognize that this is coming from the outside, that it's not something, as we talked about before, like the air you breathe.
Right.
That like, oh, I'm fat and therefore XYZ. It's not just therefore. That there is, the more one is aware of the oppression of the anti-fat bias, the more one is protected from anti-fat stigma. And that you'll find that people who are finding their way out of this self-abuse of fat stigma are finding that, hey, wait a minute, I am being discriminated against.
Yeah. You can't escape it until you recognize it.
Well, and also that once you recognize it as an external force, and this is nothing to do with like whether you should be fat, whether you shouldn't be fat, blah, 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 but just that as you recognize it as a social force, you gain more power over it because suddenly it's something you can deal with. It's external to you.
I think it's also helpful because once you recognize what issues you're dealing with are actually coming from an outside source, then you can start dealing with the problems you're creating within yourself, right? And identifying them becomes easier, right? When all of your internal feelings are sort of mixed up with everything that's coming at you, it can be very difficult to actually address what you are able to, right? Because it gets clouded and camouflaged.
Yeah.
When-
yeah.
And I think also it's externalized at you, but it is someone's internalized toxicity that they have, was external to them. And it is this like just kind of feedback loop of everything being regurgitated.
Yeah.
I should also mention secondarily that, so where does this study come from? Like, who did they study? And that kind of brings us back to our old conversation about where are the men in fat activism, because the sample size, they had 1,200 people respond. They sent out like an internet questionnaire, but I think 86% of the respondents were female, identified as female. And then another 10% identified as non-binary or something. But, so like, I think about all like 9.6% identified as men. And that doesn't invalidate the study necessarily because they're talking about internalization, but it does beg the question, is this still true in men?
Right.
Does this idea that you need to recognize external forces also apply to men? Or does it just prove the point of like, well, men aren't that affected? Or like and again, as the authors say, more study is needed. But I would just cry out like, guys, we need to start talking about this.
Yeah.
We need to keep talking about this.
Have the conversation.
Yeah.
Even if it's just like responding to a study.
Well, or maybe the study didn't get to them, right? Like if you think about how did the study get promulgated? It got forwarded. Well, who do you form? So it went out first probably to a bunch of fat activists. And then, well, who did they send it to? Well, they sent it to a lot of their other friends who's interested in this. All their female friends.
It doesn't, and this is totally opinion. I'm not backing this up with any sort of science, but in my experience, I feel like most like gay guys have to practice some introspection, right? I think racial minorities in the United States have to do some introspection to be able to operate in the modern world. I think just simply as a male, you're considered the baseline neutral. So you're not as inclined towards introspection because you're the average, right? So unless you think about it and actually have a personal identity that roots in fatness, you're not going to be able to participate in a study like this. And since so many straight men, I don't think do that sort of work because they don't have to, they're going to be hard to find for this sort of thing. But that leads us really nicely into our concept of separating fatness and identity, which is our main topic today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this one this one is a complex thought that we need to boil down into our our jumping off point before we get into it. So this came up initially. It was the question. It started with the question of, okay, you're dating a fat guy, and the people, the average whatever civilian people around you are like, okay, whatever they think about it. But then at the point that they understand, or you tell them, oh no, I love him because he's fat, rather than them just sort of getting to have their image of you or like overlooking that aspect of things. Once they're confronted with, no, fat is part of this, how their perception of you changes, how they treat you differently.
Well, and I the way you said that is sort of telling, and also it's what people hear even if you don't say it that way. I love them because they're fat. And if they didn't, therefore if they weren't fat, I wouldn't love them. And it gets boiled down to that. And it's a problem in the speaking. And how I try to explain it to civilians and even to some fat people is, no, I don't love them because they're fat. I just think it's really hot that they're fat. The way some people think it's really hot that I'm muscular, or somebody else is really hot because they're XYZPQ. It's just a characteristic that you find extremely attractive. Now, in some cases, that characteristic can be a deal breaker. Does that mean you don't love them? No, it's just something that you're super attracted to, and you probably wouldn't date someone who didn't have that characteristic.
Yeah.
I don't know so Dan and I have been rewatching True Blood, and spoilers for True Blood.
10 years ago.
season 3 or 4 or something. Suki finds out she's a fairy.
No, a real fairy.
Yeah, and there's this whole thing where like fairy blood is so delicious to vampires, and she's Bill is the one who tells her that she's a fairy because they've been investigating this and like what's so unique about her. And she's like, "Do you just love me for my blood?" And he's like, "Well, I love your blood, but it's okay." But he's like, "I will if that isn't like, I will abstain from drinking your blood to show that I love all of you and not just your blood." And it was just this weird thing. It's like, oh wow, this just feels like
So Chub
so
Chaser.
much like the whole like fat thin dynamic.
Yes, and which leads to the question. So, like, imagine being a chaser and said, like, okay, well, I just won't touch the parts of you that are fat. Yeah, this idea that I just want someone to love me for me. Well, guess what? You is fat. And I don't know which part of you isn't fat. So if you could point those parts out, I'll just love those parts. It's really problematic.
It's also a really interesting phrase in that I want to find someone who loves me for me is a statement I have heard made by every single age, body size, gender.
Yes. Usually in defense.
That is not fat unique.
Well, and usually it's in defense of someone liking something that they don't like about themselves. And that part that they don't like about themselves is not the real them.
Right.
Yeah.
That is intrinsic to that statement. Of course, everyone wants to be loved for them, but no one who loves you loves just certain parts of you.
Yeah.
It's not this dissection table. It's this, I think it comes from this whole Greek idea of mind, body, spirit. Like we chop up the human into separate aspects. No, which part of you isn't fat? So it's not that. Now, are there people who are going to use you because they like that aspect of you? Yes, but that has nothing to do with the Chub Chaser community.
That's just a shitty person.
Well, no, but I mean, and you find that somebody who's into muscle worship. I get, I'll get guys who are like, "Oh, I really want to worship your muscles." I'm like, "That's great. What else can you do?" It's not, and so that it doesn't have to always be about being fat. I think a lot of times fat people come to conclusions about chubby chasers because they haven't dated non-chubby chasers. They've been dealing with people who will tolerate their size, not care about their size, but what they like about it is that it matches their own opinion of their body, of either their fatness wanting their fatness to be invisible or wanting their fatness to be properly disapproved of.
Or I think just like, the extreme of they're with someone who just completely objectifies them, and it is not really like they are just treated as an object, which can happen to anyone.
Yeah, that's not unique to fatness.
It is not unique to fatness, but it is like, I've talked about the whole thing of, I have been with guys who just kind of are treating me like a piece of meat, and it's like, I'm not into that. I like being objectified, but I want it to be that there's the connection there. And I don't want to be with someone that is like, oh, well, I don't mind that you're big.
Yeah, that would be a red flag for you.
Yeah. And it's just like, and I had that when I was in college, and I almost went on a date with this guy, but I was like, so like, are you a chaser? He's like, oh, well, he's like, I don't mind that you're big. And it was just this weird thing of like, okay, well, either you are a chaser and you have a whole bunch of hangups about it, or it's going to be this weird thing of where I'm just going to like be super self-conscious about my body because it's like, I don't know, when someone has very strong perfume and you don't like the smell, but you're like, oh, well, I don't mind. But it's like, it's just then kind of in your head.
Yeah.
And
I do want to step up and say that there are people, perfectly nice, legitimate people who really aren't that, not bothered is almost a negative way to say it. They really don't care about body size that much. They just don't care.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to say that they're lying or that they're bad people, not at all. But the nomenclature of if someone said like, no, it's okay. I'm really into you. I don't care about your brown hair. Immediately that becomes a negative, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about X immediately sounds like I can get past that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so like if someone said like, oh, I don't mind that you're muscular. We can still do stuff. Like that would be weird. And if someone says like, I don't mind that you're, bigger. I wouldn't, that's okay. The difference is that the person who thinks they shouldn't be bigger probably likes that advance.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see. Yeah.
because
That
it
advance?
matches their own internal clock. It matches their own internal reading. I shouldn't be fat. And here's someone, because so many times people want to date someone who has the same opinion about themselves that they do. Right? See, if I value my intelligence, I want to date someone who values my intelligence. If I value my musculature, I want to date someone who values my musculature. Not necessarily get into some sort of fetishistic worship, but just values it, right? What I don't want is like, oh, it's okay. I don't care that you're smart. Right? You don't want to hear that. So if someone says, oh, wow, I'm really into your size, and you don't like your size, that fucks with you.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that I was thinking about, like, just why it bothers me so much. And I feel like if someone is just like, oh, it's this like neutral thing, or just like, we don't think about it, I feel like that person wouldn't be like, kind of take that initiative that like you do and other guys I've been with, where it's like, okay, I want to make sure that like they will fit this plate. Cause they don't think about my size, but like, whereas, a chaser will think about like, oh, is he going to fit here? Is he going to be able to get there? Is like,
Baby, it's all right. I can date big guys because I don't see size.
and it's like, yeah, I got us a booth.
Abort.
So I had an interesting thought, and I'm kind of this just popped into my head, so I kind of want to, I don't know, wheel it out and see what people think. So I was trying to think of the chaser equivalent of this, and I think that the chaser equivalent of this, which I have not necessarily worded it this way in my head per se, but I've definitely been here, is, oh, I don't mind that you're smaller.
Yeah.
And I've been like running that through my filter of like, okay, well, what did that mean for me at the time? And how do I look at that now? And like, what I look at is like, I had some experiences with people that I think they valued a lot, but I felt very guilty.
Guilty.
Yeah, because I wasn't being authentic. I was sort of, that wasn't actually true. I was saying that because I've kind of like you,
Saying what? I lost me.
like, I don't mind that you're smaller.
But he did mind.
Oh, but he did.
But I did mind, and I wasn't even
Oh,
necessarily.
wait, you said that.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they were saying it to you.
No.
No.
Oh,
The
I'm
chaser
confused.
thing of like, I'm the chaser. I know what I'm into, or at least I know enough.
And you say, yeah.
And then, but I say, but I don't mind that you're smaller. And then, okay, let's say that's what the other person wants to hear. Maybe they're a little fat, but they're not, a full, maybe not that.
I
much.
can tell you from a lot of botched personal experience that no one wants to hear that even if they hate being fat, they don't want to hear, no, it's okay. You're not as fat as what I usually go for. Like nobody wants to hear that.
There's no
ever.
good place to land.
There's no
for
good
that.
place to land that.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've fucked that up more than my fair share of times. And they've been very gracious about it. And I don't think they even realized it until maybe a month later or something when they're like, hey, wait a minute.
So what if I respond, like if someone said that to me, right? Like you're much smaller than I normally go for, but okay. If I respond to like, yeah, I feel the same way. I normally like muscular guys, but yeah, you're fine.
Yeah, exactly. That wouldn't go well.
But I'm
You're like,
kind of
"Excuse me."
curious. I kind of want to try it
How
now.
dare you?
No, but like exactly. Like, usually I go for guys with much bigger dicks, but that'll do.
Yeah.
Or even the reverse. Like, I think even if you reversed the stigma, like if you said like, well, no, usually I really like guys with little dicks. It's really hot and I like how cute they are. But you'll do too. There's that leftover quality.
Yeah.
There's
That's
that.
such a like. I'm just imagining some poor guy like, oh, like what?
I'm
Like,
horribly average size.
or like my dick's too big.
No, what I'm saying is because what it creates is this idea of leftovers, and nobody wants to be in the leftover category.
That's interesting. And I think I see what you're saying.
Yeah. I feel like we've gone. This has been interesting. I feel like we've gone off the rails from what we were actually.
Well, I don't
initially
think
talking
I
about.
don't think so, because something that I deal with a lot in the places where I speak and write is this idea of identity. You will
Right,
you will not be insulted if someone responds to a part of your identity that you put forward. Right.
Right.
There's a lot of variation of that, and there's a lot of variance in that. Like if you happen to be Asian and someone says, "Oh, I really like Asian guys," that probably won't land well.
Very much. There's so much discussion in the Asian American community about
Exactly that
specific
exactly
conversation.
that. Right.
I've never been with an Asian guy before.
Or insert anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
A fat guy, a purple guy, doesn't matter.
Normally, I don't go for Asian guys,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, but that's not. But it's not that they're rejecting their Asianness. It's just that they don't put any effort into that.
well, it turns it into a novelty.
Right, right. So Don, case in point. I'm going to use you as my lab rat. So if I say
Cheese. Cheese.
so if I say, wow, I've never been with an Asian guy. How is it with you? Like red flags, right?
God.
Immediate red flags, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're not getting coffee.
Okay, but what if I said this? What if I said this? Wow, I've never been with a writer. How is that with you?
Yeah, it's less. I know it's still weird, but it's less. Oh, I'm out.
Well, but I think you will now have a conversation about writing.
Yeah.
As opposed to the firm where you are just going to get away from the person and not have a conversation about your Asianness.
Nope. Well, I mean, again, Asianness isn't something I've cultivated. Asianness
Exactly.
isn't something I've worked for.
Exactly.
It's a different type of identity.
I'm thinking about what it would be like for to be on the receiving end of I've never been with a white guy before. And where are you from? Chicago, no, but where are you really from?
Like Sweden.
Yeah, your family's Polish, aren't they?
Well, because it's different because it's not stigmatized. Well, but my point about the writer thing is if it's something that you actively cultivate, as Don said, it's part of your identity because you've made it part of your identity in a way that you want to receive positive feedback for.
It's something you hold up for people to do that.
Well, and
with,
not
to a
just
degree.
oh, I'm proud to be Asian or I'm proud to be gay or whatever, but it's the idea that you want to receive praise for it. You want to receive nobody wants to receive a prize for their Asianness, but you would want to receive a prize for your writing. Yep. Well, so I mean that may be the way to discern it.
And I think it's maybe not, this is not in all cases, but I think in this case, it's also something you made a choice about.
Yeah.
You got to say, I want to be a writer. I'm going to be good at being a writer. That's who I am. Whereas a lot of these identities that we're talking about, you have no choice whatsoever.
Yeah.
It just
Of all the
is.
things about you that you find interesting, the thing I'm going to find interesting about you is the thing you have no control over. And all of those other things that you think are so important are less important than that.
Well, which brings us back into the topic. Do you have control over your size? Yes and no and no and yes. That is why this is so sticky. It is why, we talk about, do you identify as fat? When fat guys lose weight, one of the first things they will tell me is, yeah, but I don't want to be thin, or I'm not going to be thin, or I'll never be thin. There's always this hedge of don't worry, I'll always be fat. I just want to be less fat or healthy or whatever the byword is in there. And then I've heard from a lot of fat people about how being fat is so much a part of their identity. I think that's certainly true for you, Trevor.
Yeah. Well, and I've known people that have, they were fat and they lost weight, and it's but they just, even though they're thin and they've stayed thin, they just can never escape that, being the fat kid, that it is just so, because it was so traumatic.
I really believe the body shapes the soul. And when you live in a fat body for most of your early life, you have a fat soul. I mean, I do. I have a fat soul. If I woke up tomorrow at 120 pounds, I would still be thinking of myself as this body type.
I wonder how much of it is, because there is a stage of extreme weight loss where it's oh, I fit here. I'm surprised. Oh, okay. I guess I have this body that fits here now.
Yeah.
But then there's another, and maybe what you're referring to, I don't know, where you're so used to being abused for your size that when it doesn't happen, you notice.
Oh God, yes.
And
absolutely.
you notice, and there's a lot of ways to notice it. Part of it could be resentment. All of a sudden, people who never talked to you before suddenly find you interesting, even though you've been in their sphere for 10 years.
When that happened to me, white hot hatred, just for a split second. Just for a split second.
And I want to point out that that's not universal. I have talked to people for whom that happens, and the reaction is, oh, I made it. I'm in the club.
Oh.
I passed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can see why that's a huge relief,
Yeah.
but it's also
Well, I mean, like I said, the primary motivation, the quickest way out of a stigmatized group is to leave the group,
yeah,
not end the stigma worldwide.
right.
It's a lot quicker to just get out of the group. If you can, if you decide you should, can, would, blah, 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 blah. That's a huge thicket of issues. But yeah, a lot of people, they lose weight so they get treated better.
When I wonder,
And they may not even perceive it that way.
Which
It's just
is-
all of a sudden life looks better. I'm so
and
much
I'll be
happier.
honest, like I can't argue with that.
Yeah.
You know, I can't argue with someone who's just like tired, is just
Yeah.
tired.
and when I wonder if that's part of like there's the class of former fat person who is just especially toxic to fat people. And I wonder if it's that like, I don't know, self-hatred because it's like, I used to be you and I was wrong and why aren't you getting that you're wrong?
I think there's two versions of it. I think there's the I hated that part of myself and now I hate that part of you. And there's also the like I did it and now I can save you.
Yeah.
I saved me, now I
Yeah.
can save you.
I have met. Yep. And the I don't know, the kind of grosser version which is the person who thought they were a fat kid, but were really just a regular ass kid, and then they got super super fit, and they're like, if I did it, you can do
Oh,
it
God.
too.
Oh,
It's like,
Jesus.
go fuck yourself 100.
And if
different
I can
ways.
do it, you should do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you have no excuse for not doing it. Like you have no excuse. That's what there's a particular person I'm referring
It's
to.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
people who get thin can be kind of like ex-smokers. Like they can just be the most zealous evangelists of their new lifestyle.
Yeah.
But I think we have a tip today.
Yep.
Yeah, we do. We're back at it.
Now that we've solved that problem.
The theme, I guess, this month is towels. Did you not get a towel last week? Do you still need a towel? You need more towels. Why aren't you buying towels?
How wet were you?
So there was a Kickstarter that was successfully funded, and it was for towel, all caps.
Towel.
And it was towels for larger bodies that come in different sizes, which I love because I think it's always like the struggle of like when you're making a bigger, like a towel bigger, like how much bigger do I make it?
Yeah.
And wanting to have different options. So it's like, it's towels up to 7X.
I love that the first line underneath their tagline is "We are towel."
It's a toweling inferno. Wow.
Oh, gosh.
They had a very successful Kickstarter, and they're going to be launching pre-order soon. Pre-orders might actually be out by the time this episode comes out.
Yes, you have
but I
to
think
think a month in advance.
Should follow towel. Buy towel, be towel. Always towel. I love it. I love that. And I love that there are, like, you're getting to a point to where it's like, there's options for towels for fat people. It's not just like, oh, get the fat person towel. It's like, choose which fat person towel you want.
Because like I want a big towel, but there is such a thing as too big a towel for me too.
It's called a bed sheet. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
I don't know. I have
great.
opposite problem.
I only have the fitted towel left over. I don't even know how to fold
Well,
this thing.
I think once it leaves the span of your arms, it can be difficult.
And similar as the last one we mentioned a couple weeks ago, this one also gives the sizes of the measurements of the models using the towels and sort of correlates them to the size towel that they use. And so you can kind of get a sense of like, okay, well, I'm this size. I would want this towel. Because they do it in X's as well, but that doesn't mean anything until you know, like,
Yeah,
what does it look
because
like?
you're not trying to buy a mummy shroud.
I want
or
a mum-
maybe,
yeah.
maybe.
I want a mummy shroud. I
Of
just
course,
want,
you do. Of course you do.
I want to be wrapped up.
You want to be swaddled.
Yeah, I think what you're missing is I'm the guy who has to roll you in it, aren't you?
Yeah.
Dirty mind.
Do we got a bit? I think we got a bit.
We do have a bit. All right. So since today we were talking so much about identity, and since we were talking about these awesome Chinese names or Thai names for various businesses, I thought we would talk about the identity of various businesses. There are some really awesome, terrible names out there for companies.
Oh boy.
So I've got a list here. We've got a couple different names. And we will see if you guys can pick out the fake business
Okay.
among the real ones. Okay. Once again, right, we're going to have 4 businesses. 3 are real. 1 is fake.
Okay.
All right. First one. A, Amy's Winehouse.
Oh boy,
B,
that's got to be real.
all one word, Am I Gone Funeral Home.
All right, that's probably real.
C, the Chewin' Butts.
Chewing butts.
Chew in butts.
Okay.
Chew.
Are we allowed to
Dash
ask what they
in
sell?
You're allowed to ask, but I'm not going to answer until afterwards.
Okay.
Okay.
Or D, the Passmore Gas and Propane Company.
I think chewing butts. That's my guess.
Think Chewin' Butts?
Yeah.
Is this what's not real?
Yeah. Which one is not a real business?
I think it's Amy's Winehouse.
Okay, we got one for Chewin'
That's
Butts,
pretty
one for Amy's
tasteless.
Winehouse.
I'm gonna go with chewing butts as well.
Okay, well, in fact, Amy's Winehouse
Thank
is
you very
the
much.
correct
Damn it.
answer.
That's right. Champion of copyright and patent infringement.
All right.
What is chewing butts?
Hold on, I'm going to have to open my link. I believe it's
It's like a cigar.
it's a smoking bar
yeah, that's
okay.
kind of what I was thinking.
with food.
Chewing butts.
I was thinking dog toy.
Oh, that's good.
Next one. All right, 1, Stubbs Prosthetics and Orthotics.
Okay.
B, 2, the faux establishment Fashizzle. C,
Dan doesn't get that one. It's okay. Let's move on.
Faux establishment? You telling us that's the right answer?
Pho.
Oh,
Spelled faux shizzle.
I thought FAUX.
No. That's
There you go.
probably
See, it was a
better,
faux
actually.
establishment. I thought that was the answer.
Yeah.
okay. Our third choice, Spruce Spring Clean.
That's actually, I like that.
And our final choice, STD Contractors.
That's too funny. I really want that to be real.
I think it
I'm gonna
probably
say
is.
spruce spring clean isn't
Okay.
a real one.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with that one too. That sounds like a Don. That sounds like a Don made up one.
I haven't really got a good idea, so I'll go with that too.
Okay. Well, sorry guys, it was Fashizzle on that one.
Really?
No.
Fashizzle is not a real business.
For real?
Our final one. All right. Salmonella's Chicken Palace.
I got that. That really has to not be real.
You know, because when you get a hankering for salmonellas,
All right. A Salt and Battery Fish and Chips.
I've been
Oh.
there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that one's real apparently.
Titanic Thai Restaurant.
Yeah.
THAI.
I'm pretty sure that's also real.
That's got to be real.
And Frying Nemo Seafood Restaurant.
Okay, well, I think
I want that to be real.
What was the first one?
First one is Salmonella's Chicken Palace.
That's the one. That's it. That's my vote.
I'm saying salmonella. 'Cause
Yeah, salmonellas, because it's just too. Well, I could see somebody being.
All right, we got 3 for Salmonella saying they're not real, and I'm sure Salmonella's Chicken Palace in Oklahoma City would be very
Oh my
distressed.
god!
It's Oklahoma. It's Oklahoma. That's why.
Yeah.
The fake one on the list is
Frying Nemo?
there is no fake one on that list.
you
Real
bastard.
restaurants.
Bastardo.
You
Points for
tricked
everybody.
us.
I actually did make up Frying Nemo, and then I was like, wait, I should double check this because I just assumed Disney would shut down any parody, but no, it's actually a chain in our neighborhood.
Really?
Yeah, Frying Nemo's exist in Los Angeles. So
Maybe it like lodged itself in your subconscious, and that's how you came up with it.
I'm assuming. I mean, look at they're all over the place.
Oh shit!
Oh no, that's World.
But there's still a
Yeah,
few of them.
there's multiple Frying Nemos all around the world.
Anyway,
The world around
So,
the
if you have killed and eaten a Disney character, where could you tell us about it, Trevor?
Well, we're on Facebook and Twitter as
please don't tell us about that. By the way, I don't want to know.
Oh wait, no, we're on Instagram and Twitter.
Yes.
as that Big Fat Gay Pod. We're on Facebook as the Big Fat Gay Podcast.
Keep going.
I'm so tired. We're on 5 stars everywhere. Patreon.com.
Just do it.
Big Fat Gay Pod. See the
Website.
articles. BigFatGayPod.com. Maybe you're like me and you're just you're a little tired boy. You're just ready to tuck in. You're tiny. You're little, like the wanderers or the people who live in the house. Little the people. You're where are we going? You're going to take a nap on a biscuit under a piece of cheese.
Trevor, grab that finish line with your fingernails and pull yourself across. You can do it.
And
Watch out! Oh, it's been so many hours.
You know, we should do it.
No!
It's only been like 8 hours podcast.
It's been 84 years.